welcome back. So we are talking about the end of mental illness, and just how proud I am of you after the taping of the show. It was so awesome, so much fun,
Thank you.
and how you hijacked my nieces.
Well, our nieces
Right.
were in the audience, and Change Your Brain, Heal Your Mind's the name of the show, but it's based on my book, The End of Mental Illness. And people go, oh, that's a huge promise. So let me tell you why it's called The End of Mental Illness. About 3.5 years ago, we got a call from Child Protective Services saying that our 2 nieces were taken into foster care.
So can I back up and tell the prelude to that? The call I got from my sister driving down. I got a crazy call from my sister driving down. She was driving from out of state, and it was a scary call. I actually tried to get her to pull over and go to a hospital. She was terrified of something. I didn't know if she was on substances or not, but she was very, very scared. She was driving in a state she shouldn't have been driving, a mental state she shouldn't have been driving in. And she knew that.
That was California, or?
No, mental, yes. Yes,
Sorry.
Exactly. And so I think she knew that Child Protective Services they were going to come take the kids. And so she shouldn't have been driving. She was so upset. I couldn't even understand her. It was that bad. And you shouldn't be driving when you're like that. And the next call we get was that they had taken the kids. They actually came from Oregon to California, which they are not supposed to do. But they came and they took the kids after she was in a stable environment. And so it was terrifying. It was awful. And we didn't know, we couldn't get a hold of them. We couldn't talk to them for weeks. We couldn't actually speak to them.
And Alize actually had tried to contact you.
Right. And I didn't know it because it went into like.
Yeah. So at the time, the kids were 6 and 11, and they're completely terrified. And as we understand the story, these children are loaded for mental illness. They have a genetic family history of suicides, multiple suicides, schizophrenia, drug abuse, anxiety, depression, criminal behavior, addiction. But, as we've often said on this show, genes only load the gun. It's what happens to us that pulls the trigger. And that's not good for them either. They were raised in chaos. With parents who struggled with addiction, depression, domestic violence. The kids had multiple moves, multiple schools. Life was unpredictable and very stressful, to say the least. And then they're taken by Child Protective Services, where yet more traumas occurred.
That was awful.
And at the time, you and your sister were estranged from each other because of
all the chaos,
because
and
of the addiction.
Yeah.
And we'd actually never met the little one. And
I saw her when she was a few months old.
I had never met her. And we knew we must act at the time. And so our choices were, we could have excluded the parents and just taken in the children. But what we decided, because we were thinking long term, is we would wrap services around the mother, get involved with Child Protective Service and their case, and through scanning mom, finding out she had the Irlen syndrome. She'd actually been in 19 car accidents, helping her get a handle on her addiction. 6 months later, on Mother's Day, 2017, she got the kids back. And the whole idea behind the end of mental illness is, how do I end it in them? How do you and I? Because it takes a family for sure.
It takes a village.
Yeah. How do we end mental illness in these girls? And just as importantly, how do we end it in their babies and their grandbabies? And that's what this show is about. That's what the end of mental illness is about. So when I see it that way, I don't have a problem at all with the title because it's a huge aspirational goal. And I have a plan for it that I share about in the book. And it's basically what we tell you every week in the Brain Warriors Way. And with the program, the girls are happy, A student, social, no longer addicted to hot Cheetos. You should have seen that first grocery trip we went on with them where we took them to the store and we went, we don't spend money on food that will hurt you.
I have to tell you, there's one story that is so funny. So these girls are used to being scrappy and surviving, right? So when there were times they were like living pretty lean, let's put it that way. I'll just like leave it at that. So they've figured out ways to survive. So the older one went to school. She would take the little bit of money she had, which was very little. She would take whatever little bit of lunch money she had. She would buy a bag of Cheetos out of the vending machine and sell it for twice as much as she bought it for. Go buy 2 more, sell them for twice as much as she bought them for. And she was making money doing this. I'm like, you're a drug dealer. What are you doing? So we had to like nip that.
So I was impressed at her entrepreneurial.
Yeah, she's very much an entrepreneur.
Spirit.
It's hilarious.
So we were putting their bodies in a healing environment. So what issues run in your family? I want you to think about that. Plenty of anxiety in my family. And I was a pretty anxious kid, looking back on it. There are big issues in your family with addiction and depression and a grandmother that really struggled, we think, probably with PTSD.
Yeah, I'm sure of it.
What she grew up in. And then forced menopause when she was young, where they just didn't take her uterus.
Full hysterectomy.
They had a total hysterectomy.
Do any replacement.
Right. So in the show, I basically talk about 6 practical steps to end mental illness. But before we get to those, there's this concept that you're going to hear me talk about a lot for the next 10 years. If I was an evil ruler, how would I create mental illness in America? Because if we know how they're created, we can develop strategies to prevent them. Or if I was a good ruler, and here for the show, we used an image of Tana as a superhero because mothers...
I have a cape and everything.
Mothers are the superheroes in our families. I mean, they're clearly the health leaders, and we see that with the Brain Warriors Way. They're the Brain Warrior generals, if you will, which is why men who are married live longer than men who aren't married.
Yeah.
But women who are married do not live as long
because
they're dealing with the men.
Unless you're married to someone like you.
And so, for example, a good ruler strategy would be to create a nationwide brain health campaign, because the end of mental illness begins with brain health. An evil ruler strategy is continue with the creation of addictive social media apps that make everyone else's life look amazing, and yours looks terrible by comparison. It's this terrible comparison society that we're in. So step number 1, eliminate the term mental illness and call these things what they really are. Brain health issues that steal your mind. Mental illness, it just stains everyone diagnosed, making them less likely to seek help when these are our brain imaging work clearly said these are brain health issues that steal your mind. When we come back, we're going to talk about 2 through 6. What did you learn? Did you learn anything? Post it on any of your social media channels. Leave a review. Please leave questions for us. We love answering your questions at brainwarriorswaypodcast.com.
If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're considering coming to Amen Clinics or trying some of the brain healthy supplements from BrainMD, you can use the code podcast10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com or a 10% discount on all supplements at brainmdhealth.com. For more information, give us a call at 855-978-1363.